Before I begin on defining the concept of rhetoric and its characteristics, functions, as well as the process of analyzing rhetoric, let us look first at how the term rhetoric was used today. Let's start with its negative connotations. We hear people saying that rhetoric is empty talk or deception or flattery. This is rooted in ancient Greece, where the formal study of rhetoric we're talking about today began. The sophists are a particular group of teachers who offer their expertise in rhetoric, which was used back then to defend oneself to the public and the court. Teaching people how to defend themselves is a great idea, but the bad thing is that these teachers of rhetoric teach people how to use flattery and deception instead of providing sound arguments to win the case. This idea was also affirmed by John Locke on how he sees rhetoric. The study and practice of rhetoric have been used to mislead people and present wrong ideas. But the rhetoric that we're going to study will not focus on its negative connotations, nor just side with the positive ones. We will look at rhetoric in a general sense, both as means of information or disinformation. Another connotation of rhetoric is that rhetoric is persuasion. This is rooted in how Aristotle defined rhetoric. But as the study and practice of rhetoric developed from the time of ancient Greece to our present period, is the concept of rhetoric limited to only persuasion? The context of rhetoric in the time of Aristotle is to persuade to win the case. But in today's context, we will look at rhetoric as a means to create an impact to an audience. In other words, there is more to rhetoric than persuasion alone. But in its general sense, rhetoric has been closely concerned with the act of persuasion, because the effort to influence other people's thoughts and actions always has a role to every human interaction. So, how do we define rhetoric? According to George Kennedy, rhetoric is the energy inherent in emotion and thought, transmitted through a system of signs, including language, to others to influence their decisions or actions. In other words, rhetoric is focused on influencing the audience over their decisions and actions by employing symbols such as language and nonverbal cues. Kennedy's definition may imply that we use symbols to persuade people, but it would also mean to create an impact that would lead to a certain action, an action the speaker desires their audiences to do. And that leads to James Herrick's definition of the art of rhetoric, which is the systematic study and intentional practice of effective symbolic expression. Here, effectivity is inclined to the purpose of the rhetor or speaker. Their purpose may be to persuade or just clarify, or to inform, or maybe to entertain. But the end goal is that whatever the speaker's purpose may be, and whatever tools and symbols they use to achieve their purpose, the produced rhetorical artifact should create an impact or effect to the audience. How do we know if the selected communication material is considered rhetoric? Here we will look at the characteristics of a rhetorical discourse. First is that rhetorical discourse is planned. That means you think of what you're going to say, who is the audience, where to say your message, and how will you say it. Next is that rhetorical discourse is adapted to an audience. In rhetoric, the audience is important, and if you're the one who will deliver the message, you must know who your audience is and that your act must attend to the audience's values, experiences, beliefs, social status, and aspirations. Another characteristic is that rhetorical discourse is shaped by human motives. That means that rhetorical messages reveal the rhetor's commitments, goals, desires, or purposes, and that the rhetorical act would lead to an action related to the rhetor's motivations. The fourth characteristic of a rhetorical discourse is that it is responsive to a situation. Any message that is delivered to an audience is automatically an invitation for the audience and even rhetors to respond. And this is also the basis of how we evaluate rhetorical artifacts, by looking at the responses and how the artifact invites response. And the final characteristic of a rhetorical discourse is that it seeks persuasion. That means the main intention of a rhetorical artifact is to influence the audience to respond to the given idea according to the intention of the rhetor. We know that the main function of rhetoric is to persuade, but rhetoric also has other important functions. First is that rhetoric tests ideas. Rhetoric is an important and peaceful means for testing ideas publicly, and by that, it does not just present ideas, but also to check the gaps and improve the discourse. The next function is that rhetoric assists advocacy. Our ideas remain private until we have an opportunity to share our ideas publicly. Thus, it transforms an idea to an advocacy where we gather, support, and develop the idea in various contexts. Another function is that rhetoric distributes power. The moment that we have the opportunity to speak in public means that we already have the power to shape the minds of the public. When one ideology dominates in a society, it can shape even our basic conceptions of rhetoric in ways that deliver power to one group. The next function is that rhetoric discovers facts. Public debates, forums, and meetings allows us to see and examine facts and truths which are crucial to inform decision making. Another function is that rhetoric shapes knowledge. Forms of public address and rhetorical interactions are ways for people to accept some ideas as true and to reject others as false. Thus, people involved in establishing knowledge will draw on what they know of the art to persuade their peers and what is epistemic and what is not. And the last social function of rhetoric is to build communities. Community is not a geographical entity but people who find common cause with one another, who see the world in a similar way, who identify their concerns and aspirations with of other people. Now we have an idea of what rhetoric is and how important rhetoric is to society, politics, and even history. So, how do we study or analyze rhetorical artifacts? How do we evaluate if a rhetorical artifact accomplishes its purpose by examining the techniques that the creator uses to persuade, influence, or alter the audience's perspective? But before we go into that, what is a rhetorical artifact? According to the Encyclopedia of Communication Research Methods, a rhetorical artifact is a collection of symbols that is meaningful in a culture. To expound on that, a rhetorical artifact has a context, has a message, and uses symbols to create an impact to the intended audience. Rhetorical artifacts can be any form of communication as long as it fits to the characteristics of a rhetorical discourse. That means it can be speeches, advertisements, articles, social media posts, works of art, songs, music videos, films, flyers, pamphlets, pubmats, and academic texts that are planned, adapted to an audience, shaped by motives, responsive to a situation, and seeking to influence or persuade. Now that we know what rhetorical artifacts are, what then are the things that we should look at when analyzing rhetorical artifacts? When we look at the elements of rhetoric, we need to answer these following questions. First, who is the speaker? What is their background or credentials? What is their relation to the topic? The next is, who is the audience? Or who was most likely to read, see, or hear the message? Third is, what is the intended goal or motivation of the speaker to have on the audience? What is the main idea of the speaker communicated to the audience? Or what was the key takeaway for the audience? 5 is that, what is the category or type of communication? Did the speaker choose the best genre to accomplish their purpose? And finally, what are the historical, socio-economic, and political variables that shape the rhetorical artifact? How might context have shaped the speaker's purpose? How might context have shaped how the audience received the message? Answering these questions will help us identify the speaker, audience, purpose, message, genre, and context of a rhetorical artifact. This will also help us to easily analyze the artifact. Now, in making a rhetorical analysis, we need to find out if the rhetor fulfilled its purpose. We start by describing the rhetorical situation along with its context. Then, we need to provide a lens for analysis. It may be a theory of rhetoric or concepts constructed by rhetoricians. Then, we need to explain the credibility of the speaker, identify parts that were or were not effective, and how the whole artifact shaped the responses of the audience, critique gaps, explain how rhetorical acts or tools used to resonate with the audience, and describe the emotional effect of the artifact to the audience, whether or not it aligns with the speaker's purpose. A rhetorical analysis is not a mere review or how you like or dislike the artifact, nor a presentation of opinion. It is a presentation of facts and an evaluation of the impact of the artifact to the intended audience using the available theories or concepts of rhetoric. Analyzing rhetoric is important because it will help us understand not just the message but also the speaker and the audience. And we can see here how people use communication to inform people, gather support, or even deceive or disinform people. It can be used for both good and bad. And as speech communication scholars, we need to be responsible on using rhetoric by being aware and critical on how important and useful rhetoric is in shaping not just the minds of the people, but also the world.